The hospital's fluorescent light illuminated Agnes's room, where shades of blue and white mixed in an environment that, for many, could seem cold and impersonal. But for me, this space had become a refuge, a place where every conversation with the older patient turned into a chapter in a story I didn't know I needed to hear. As she organized the medicines on the table next to the bed, the characteristic smell of antiseptic mixed with the soft lavender fragrance that Agnes wore, a perfume that seemed to tell more about her than any words could. "Sarah, honey, did you remember to bring my cookbook?" Agnes's voice was sweet and soft, but there was an intensity in her expression that made me feel like every moment was precious. "Of course, Agnes. I was just waiting for a quiet moment to read a little with you," I replied, as I sat in the chair next to her bed. "What recipe would you like to share today?" She smiled, and her eyes sparkled as if she were remembering happier days. "Ah, my grandmother's carrot cake recipe. She always said that a well-made cake was the key to happiness. Can you tell me how she did it?" I asked, knowing that these stories were more than just recipes. They were relics of a past that Agnes held dearly. She had a special way of mixing the ingredients, almost as if she were dancing in the kitchen. "And she always put a little love into each spoonful," said Agnes with a distant look, as if she was watching the scene unfold in front of her. "You know, Sarah, I don't have family around here. Sometimes I feel so alone." Those words weighed on my heart. "You have me, Agnes. I promise I'll always be here by your side," I stated, holding her hand, which was so fragile and warm. "We can become a family in a way." She looked at me, the lines on her face deepening as a sad smile formed. "You are such a kind young woman. Life can be cruel, but it is also full of surprises. Sometimes I wonder if I have something to leave the world, if leaving a legacy is even possible." "You have a lot to leave, Agnes. Your stories, your love for life. It all matters," I replied, trying to encourage her. "And who knows, one day you might teach me how to make that carrot cake." Her smile widened, and for a moment, the sadness seemed to dissipate. "I promise we'll do it. One day when I'm better." But as the weeks passed, Agnes' health deteriorated. One day when I entered her room, I noticed that she was more fragile than ever. Her eyes were tired and closed. "Hi, my dear," I whispered, moving closer. "Are you well?" She slowly opened her eyes and with a visible effort tried to smile. "I'm here, Sarah. Just tired. Time is passing and I feel like my moment is coming." "Don't say that, Agnes. You still have so much to live for," I exclaimed, not knowing how to comfort her. But the truth was that I already felt a shadow of sadness approaching. "Sometimes life takes us down paths we don't understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm grateful to have you. You've become more than a nurse to me. You're like a daughter." Those words hit me like lightning. "I'm grateful you're in my life. You don't know how much your stories have taught me," I replied, holding her hand firmly. "I promise I'll be here until the end." Agnes smiled again, but this time there was a deep sadness in her eyes. "Life is full of secrets, my dear. Sometimes, what appears to be a blessing can contain shadows we can't even imagine." Days later, when the machines stopped and silence took over, I found myself alone in a world that seemed to have lost some of its color. The pain of loss was mixed with gratitude for having met such a special woman. But in the midst of grief, something unexpected happened. A letter reached me, written in a handwriting that I recognized as Agnes's. The family lawyer had asked me to meet him. Those words written on paper left me stunned. Life, just as Agnes had said, was full of surprises. And little did I know that the biggest one was yet to come. The lawyer's room was imposing. The walls were covered in dark wood, and the smell of old paper hung in the air. As soon as I entered, I was greeted by a middle-aged man with gray hair and glasses running down his nose. He introduced himself as Dr. Harrison, the lawyer responsible for Agnes' estate. I felt butterflies in my stomach as I sat across from him, anticipation mixed with a hint of anxiety. "Sarah, isn't it?" he asked, looking at me over his glasses. "I have received confirmation that you are Agnes Timmins' sole heir." "Yes, it's me. It's hard to believe she's gone. She was such a special woman to me, I replied, trying to control my emotion. She really was, said Dr. Harrison, with a look that seemed to mix compassion and professionalism. Now, as for the inheritance, it is a significant amount, but as you can imagine, there are some details we need to discuss. He pulled a document from his desk and began to explain. Agnes' fortune came from a family business, something that goes back several generations. However, there is a possibility that there are other unknown heirs who could lay claim to this inheritance. Other heirs? My heart raced. You mean there might be more people involved who are also entitled to this? Yes, there's a chance. Agnes never mentioned anyone, but legally, it's something we should look into, he said, adjusting his glasses and looking into my eyes. If you don't mind, we can start this check right now. Please do whatever you have to. I just want to understand all of this, I replied, feeling a growing pressure in my chest. Fortune seemed like a gift, but now it was like a shadow, threatening everything I had built in my mind. The conversation continued, but I could barely pay attention. My ideas revolved around the clinic that I always dreamed of opening. With inheritance, this could become a reality, but the uncertainty about the origin of the money left me distressed. Later, as I left the office, the sunlight hit me full on, and I closed my eyes for a moment. I decided I needed some time to think. I went to a nearby cafe, ordering a cappuccino, and sat at a secluded table. As I watched people pass by, one thought bothered me. What was really behind this fortune? Agnes's life, her stories, her loneliness. Everything seemed so far away now. Days later at home, I started planning what to do with the money. The idea of opening a health clinic for the elderly was tempting. I could provide a space where people like Agnes would feel welcomed and cared for. But with each step, doubt returned. Would it be right to use this money? What if he was tainted with something dark? I then decided that I needed to understand more about Agnes. I organized his belongings, hoping to find clues that would help me clarify things. Each object seemed to tell a story. Yellowed photos, crumpled letters, and small objects that reflected his life. But what caught my attention the most was a small diary, hidden under a pile of clothes. With my hands shaking, I opened the diary and began to read. Agnes' words were sincere and, at the same time, filled with pain. She talked about her regrets, her choices, and her lost loves. One passage in particular made me stop. Loneliness can be one of the greatest punishments we can choose for ourselves, it said. Tears started streaming down my face. Little did I know that his life had been marked by so many scars. Why didn't you tell me this, Agnes? I muttered to myself, as the pain of his memories intertwined with my own confusion. I needed to understand more, not just about the heritage, but about the woman who had touched me in so many ways. Fortune could be a blessing or a curse, but the true inheritance was in the lessons Agnes left me. I determined that I wasn't just going to accept what was given to me. I needed to discover the truth, even if it meant facing the ghosts of the past. Morning light streamed in through my bedroom window, but the feeling of calm that used to warm me was now suffocating. With Agnes's diary in hand, I felt like a spy invading a world that didn't belong to me, but that was somehow now intrinsically linked to me. Every page I turned was a glimpse into a life full of difficult choices and betrayals that shaped the woman I knew. I couldn't stop thinking, what would I have done in your place? The first passage I read talked about lost love. Agnes described a man who, according to her words, had been her great passion. He promised me the world, but he took my heart and threw it at the feet of another, she had written, with a sadness so palpable that I could almost hear her tears falling onto the paper. I found myself reflecting on my own love choices. I always looked for stability and security, but was that what I really wanted? Or like Agnes, was I just avoiding the risk of being hurt? While I was getting lost in her memories, my friend Clara showed up unannounced. She entered my room with a wide smile, but soon noticed that the atmosphere was heavy. "Hi, Sarah. What are you doing?" She approached, noticing the diary open on my bed. "Do you still have that diary of Agnes's?" "Hi, Clara. I'm trying to understand more about her life. It's more complicated than I thought. I closed the journal, feeling like I needed some space to process everything. Complicated how? Are you getting carried away by this? Sarah, the woman is already gone. You cannot bear the weight of her choices. I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts. But what if the fortune I inherited comes at a price? What happens if I find out she did terrible things to get this? Clara sat next to me, her expression now more serious. You can't live in fear of what you don't know. Sometimes you need to enjoy life and move on. Life is too short to hold on to ghosts from the past. But what if I'm doing the wrong thing? What if this fortune comes from a dark place? I couldn't get that idea out of my head. The possibility that the money had been acquired through illicit means made me uneasy. Sarah, you can't change Agnes's past. You can only decide what to do with what you receive. Consider it a gift, a chance to do something good. And you have plans, don't you? Open your clinic. Yes, but I don't want it to become a burden. I feel like this legacy might not just be about me. The uncertainty in my voice was evident, and I knew I needed more answers. So why don't you investigate? Go after the truth. If you find that fortune has a price, you can decide what to do with it. But don't let fear paralyze you. Clara looked at me with her blue eyes, always full of determination. You are right. I need to know more about Agnes and what really happened. I can't let this inheritance consume me. As I spoke, a new determination began to grow within me. With that decision in mind, I stood up, feeling a surge of courage. I will investigate. I'm going to find out where this fortune came from and what really happened in her life. If there's something dark, I need to know. Clara smiled, satisfied. That's right. And no matter what you encounter, I will be here by your side, supporting you. The conversation made me feel lighter, but the idea that heritage could be tainted by a dark past hung over me like a dark cloud. I knew I needed to move forward and uncover the secrets Agnes left behind. With Agnes's diary closed but her words echoing in my mind, I was ready to face whatever was in front of me. It was time to uncover the past, not only to understand Agnes, but also to understand myself better. The lawyer's office was filled with a formal air that made me nervous. The walls, adorned with diplomas and awards, seemed to watch me as I sat in the leather chair, my trembling hand holding a folder of documents. The lawyer, a middle-aged man with a serious look, began to explain the implications of the inheritance I had inherited from Agnes. Sarah, it is important that you understand that without a clear will, inheritance can become a legal battleground, he said, leaning forward slightly. If there are other heirs, they may dispute the validity of what Agnes left you. Other heirs? I asked, my voice coming out louder than I intended. The idea that other people could claim the fortune made me uneasy. But Agnes had no family. She had a daughter from what I could find, but there are no records of her in recent years, replied the lawyer, adjusting his glasses on his face. This makes the situation even more delicate. You need to proceed with caution. I felt the weight of his words. I had become enchanted with the idea of using the inheritance to open a clinic, a desire that Agnes had expressed on several occasions. But now, with the possibility of legal disputes hanging over me, the dream was starting to feel more like a burden than a blessing. What if I just give up the inheritance? I questioned, trying to hide my frustration. I don't want to get involved in legal fights. This is a decision only you can make. But remember that an inheritance is not just a gift. It can come with responsibilities and secrets, he replied, with a look that seemed to evaluate me. I left the office with a confused mind, the lawyer's words echoing in my head. The truth is, I didn't know Agnes as well as I thought I did. I walked to the car, feeling the need to breathe fresh air. The idea that she had a daughter, someone who could have been a part of her life, made me uneasy. A few hours later, driven by an almost compulsive need to find out more, I decided to visit Agnes' old house. The place had a nostalgic aura, as if time had stopped there. Upon entering, the smell of old wood and the echo of creaking floors transported me to the past. I was surrounded by the memories Agnes had left behind. As I searched the rooms, I found a dusty photo album in the living room. Leafing through the pages, I saw images of a young Agnes, full of life, next to a little girl. My heart raced. Could this be the daughter the lawyer mentioned? It was then that I heard a familiar voice. "Are you looking for something?" An elderly man with piercing blue eyes and a sad smile appeared in the doorway. It was a friend of Agnes, someone I remembered her mentioning. I'm Sarah, Agnes's nurse," I explained, trying to hide my curiosity. "I'm trying to understand more about her." "Ah, Agnes," he sighed, visibly moved. She was a strong woman, but life was not kind to her. He lost a daughter in a tragic accident. That marked her forever. "A daughter," I repeated with a heavy heart. She never mentioned it to me. She kept everything to herself. The scandal that surrounded the girl's death. People never knew the truth. Agnes was a lonely woman, but she had a huge heart, he said, looking at the ground. His words hit me like a punch in the gut. A scandal. What else did I not know about Agnes's life? What happened to her daughter? I asked, curiosity overcoming my fear. She was just 5 years old when the accident occurred. Agnes never recovered. The pain isolated her from the world. "And as you know, loneliness can be a treacherous company," the man replied, his voice breaking. I felt a wave of compassion for Agnes. The fortune I had inherited, which seemed so glamorous at first glance, now appeared as an echo of its tragedies. The inheritance had an emotional weight that I wasn't ready to carry. What if this fortune wasn't a gift, but a way to redeem Agnes's past mistakes? "Do you think I should give this up?" I asked my friend, doubt reflected in my eyes. "That's something you need to decide. But remember, sometimes what we inherit goes beyond material possessions. It is a responsibility that can bring to light the shadows of the past," he replied, with an understanding look. I left Agnes's house with a heavy heart, knowing that the real issue was not just about money or possessions. It was about love, loss, and the legacy we leave for those we love. The fortune I inherited felt more like a burden than a blessing, and I needed to decide if I was willing to carry that weight. The morning breeze carried a coolness that cheered me as I drove toward the nearby town, where Emily, Agnes' long-lost daughter, supposedly lived. With each kilometer covered, my heart beat stronger, a mixture of anxiety and determination. I remembered the words Agnes had shared with me, about the pain of losing a child and the loneliness that accompanied her for so many years. I needed to find Emily, to believe that I could bring a little peace to this story so marked by tragedy. When I finally parked in front of a small apartment, the sun was shining brightly and illuminating the entrance to the building. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside me. "It's just a conversation," I reminded myself. "Just a chat." I climbed the stairs with hesitant steps, and when I reached the door, I hesitated before knocking. The sound echoed in the empty hallway, and after a few moments that seemed like an eternity, the door opened. Emily was a woman with clear eyes and a strong expression, but there was a deep sadness that seemed to hang over her. "What do you want?" His voice was firm, but there was a slight tremor. I could see she was prepared to protect herself. "Hi, I'm Sarah Mitchell, the nurse who took care of your mother, Agnes," I began, trying to maintain my composure. "Sorry to bother you, but I needed to talk to you about the inheritance she left." The expression on Emily's face changed instantly. A mixture of anger and sadness invaded her. "Inheritance? Do you think money can make up for the pain my mother caused me? Make me forget she's gone?" I froze for a moment, Emily's words hitting my heart like a blow. "That's not what I'm trying to do," I replied, my voice shaking. "Agnes talked a lot about you, and I truly believe she would like you to know about the fortune she left behind. And most importantly, I would like you to know that she loved you." "Did she? If she really loved me, she wouldn't have abandoned me. What do you want from me? Some kind of recognition? Money?" "I don't want any of that," Emily shouted, her voice echoing in the hallway. The weight of his words cut like a knife, and I felt like I was losing the battle. "Emily, I understand the pain is immense, but the inheritance is an opportunity to honor her memory. You can use it for something that makes you happy." To heal yourself. Healing. Do you have any idea what it's like to lose a mother? She wasn't there when I needed her most. All the money in the world can't fill the void she left, he replied, tears beginning to form in his eyes. I could feel her pain and it hurt me deeply. I'm not here to discuss the pain you feel. I'm here to offer you a chance to rewrite some of this history. Agnes's fortune may be a way for you to find peace. I tried again, searching for some connection. Please think about it. Emily crossed her arms and looked at the floor, as if she was struggling internally with her feelings. What if I say I don't want this inheritance? That I don't want any of it? You have that right, but also think about what Agnes would like. She spent her life regretting it, and maybe this inheritance is a way to redeem those mistakes. I said, my voice softer. She may not have been the mother you deserved, but she cared. Emily's eyes lit up, and I could see that my word had had some effect. She took a deep breath, trying to control herself. It's all so confusing. I don't know how to deal with this. You don't need to decide now. Take as long as you need. I'm here if you need someone to talk to, I offered, a little more hopeful. The tension in the air was palpable, but there was a small opening. Emily looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a fraction of vulnerability in her gaze. If you really cared, you wouldn't have come here to talk about money. I care, Emily. And that's exactly why I'm here, I replied sincerely. I just want you to have a chance to find some peace. And so, in that half-open door, we began to take the first steps toward a conversation that could change our lives. As soon as I left Emily's house, my heart was in turmoil. The anger and sadness I saw in his eyes when I mentioned the inheritance still echoed in my mind. I couldn't believe that, amid all the confusion and pain, the truth about Agnes's will was being hidden. My mind was spinning, thinking about everything that had happened. And now, with the revelation that part of the fortune belonged to Emily, I felt a growing indignation. I decided I needed to confront the lawyer. That man who seemed so respectable now seemed like a real villain to me. Upon entering his office, the tension in the air was palpable. He was sitting behind his desk, with a smile that seemed forced. Sarah, it's good to see you again. How can I help you today? He said, trying to maintain his composure. You know exactly why I'm here, don't you? I replied, crossing my arms. You hid a part of Emily's inheritance. Agnes made that clear in her will, and you chose to ignore it to profit from the confusion. He hesitated for a moment, the expression on his face changing from confident to defensive. Sarah, you must understand that inheritance rights can be complex. There are often nuances that are not easily understood. Don't give me that wordplay, I shouted, frustration boiling over. You manipulated the entire situation. Agnes wanted Emily to get that part of the inheritance, and you decided to hide it, probably so that I would get everything. Aren't you ashamed? He stood up, trying to maintain his professional image, but the tension in the room was palpable. I'm just doing my job, Sarah. Dividing assets is a complicated process. You need to understand the feelings involved. Feelings? Do you talk about feelings while taking advantage of two women's pain? This isn't work, it's exploitation. I felt like the anger was consuming me, but there was also a growing clarity. I'm going to take this to the authorities and expose everything you did. His expression changed again, this time to a mixture of fear and anger. You can't do that. Are you sure you want to open this Pandora's box? There may be consequences. Consequences? I laughed sarcastically. The consequences are already here, and you are responsible for it. If you don't tell the truth, I'll do it myself. The conversation ended in a stalemate, but I knew I had to act. As soon as I left the office, a feeling of relief began to wash over me. I wasn't going to let him go unpunished. With the help of a lawyer friend, I sought the necessary information to formalize a complaint. The truth would come out. The day the authorities met with the lawyer, I was nervous but determined. Watching his unmasking was a moment of pure satisfaction. He tried to defend himself, But the evidence of his manipulations was irrefutable. The release of Agnes' will, with the part intended for Emily, was a severe blow to him. At the end of the hearing, he was legally punished for his unethical conduct. With this victory, I was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. It was time to face Emily again and explain everything. I met her at a local cafe, where she was sitting, looking distant. When he saw me, his expression hardened. "What do you want, Sarah? I need to talk to you. About the inheritance. And about what happened." Her look was skeptical, but I continued. "Agnes left you a portion of her fortune. The lawyer hid it from both of us. But now it's resolved." Emily watched me, her expression slowly changing, as if she was processing each word. "So, you really didn't get it all? Why would you bother telling me that?" "Because I care, Emily. Inheritance is not just money or possessions. It is the legacy that Agnes left. And more than anything, I want you to know that we can share this. We can support each other. That's what Agnes would have wanted." The tears began to stream down Emily's face, and I realized that beneath her anger was pain and longing. "You're right. I just didn't know how to deal with it all. I don't want the inheritance as compensation, but rather as a way to understand my mother." With a shy but sincere hug, we both reconnected. At that moment, I understood that true fortune was not in the material possessions that Agnes had left behind, but rather in the trust and love that we were beginning to build with each other. So, we decided to share the inheritance, but more importantly, we decided to form a new family where love and care were what really mattered.